What's going on, everybody? So there's a couple days left until Sunday, and Jingwen will leave the game for now, at least. Sunday's gonna replace with Fugue on the banner, and the rerun character of the second half of 2.7 is gonna be Firefly, as you kind of figured out by now. Is Firefly worth it in version 2.7 of Honkai Star Rail? Now, let's talk about it, right? So Firefly pretty much only has a couple characters who she can actually work with. She's heavily reliant on break damage, which means that Sparkle's gonna be useless with Firefly, Jade's gonna be useless, Baronia's gonna be useless, Himiko's gonna be useless, Jingmu is gonna be useless, Silverwolf is gonna be useless because she can already implant fire weakness, Seely's gonna be useless, everyone, quite literally everybody here would be useless with Firefly. The only characters that she can really resonate well with is Renmei, Harmony Trailblazer, Aventurine kind of. They don't really work together, but Aventurine obviously can just keep your team alive. Gallagher, which is, this is saying that people usually use Firefly with, and Lingsha. So you don't have a lot of options, but assuming that you do have Renmei, then that alone would be enough for me to recommend Firefly, right? If you don't have Renmei, you don't have even Gallagher, then it would be a little bit tough to actually recommend going for Firefly. But the thing is, a Firefly team comp really isn't too hard to get up and running. Let me show you, right? So Firefly, obviously you'd have to get her E0, S0 is enough. I don't have any Adelons on Firefly. You can use the free Herda light cone on the fall of an Eon. This is her second best in slot weapon or light cone, right? So E0, S0 is perfectly fine. I also have an E0, S0 Renmei, right? That would also work perfectly fine. Harmony Trailblazer is free, and her E6, or their E6 is free, and Gallagher is a 4-star, and he was free at one point, so you might already have him, chances are. In that case, you quite literally only need to pull for 2 5-stars in order to actually get the team up and running, because the other 2 are essentially free, right? If you have Renmei, Firefly, I would say you should probably go for, but I will talk about the future of the game's meta, right? The upcoming meta shift in 3.x. So I'll talk about that in a little bit because that is a big factor, right? But Renmei, very good with Firefly. Harmony Trailblazer, very good with Firefly. And Gallagher, very good with Firefly, but his heals aren't the best. But it's whenever you get plenty of opportunities to heal with Gallagher, but when you're doing like Protocol 7 of Divergent Universe, it can be a little bit tricky, or some of the higher levels of Divergent Universe, right? But for MOC, Pure Fiction Apocalyptic Shadow, you're not gonna die with Gallagher, unless you're maybe you would if you're going up against like Hule, but otherwise you'll be fine. But let's talk about the meta shift, right? Because this is actually a lot bigger than people might think. So I would still recommend you go for Firefly, but maybe don't invest into her heavily, right? You don't need to go for E2, S1, especially not her light code. I think her light code is a little extra. Her E1, I would say stop there. E1, S0 is about where you would want to be for Firefly. She is one of the best DPSs in the game right now, but the meta is about to shift quite a bit in 3.x, right? We're getting a brand new path, right? The Remembrance path. Harmony Trailblazer might be replaced for a lot of people with Remembrance Trailblazer. You might want to use Remembrance Trailblazer over Harmony Trailblazer in a lot of cases. And Fugue's coming, and a lot of people do plan on replacing Harmony Trailblazer with Fugue. I already made a video about that, but Break might not be at the pinnacle of the meta for very long. So that's why I would recommend you go for Firefly, but I wouldn't recommend that you go all in on her, right? I wouldn't recommend you go for Adelons and her light cone. Firefly, I think long term will still function well, but there's gonna be MOCs, there's gonna be pure fictions in the future where Firefly is just not gonna be a character that you would want to use. And let me give you an example of that. So Firefly is very heavily reliant on break damage and super break, right? That's her whole kit. Now, let's say one of the bosses of MOC is a future boss that you can't do any kind of weakness damage to it. Its weakness bar is permanently locked. In that case, Firefly would actually be an F tier character. You would never be able to do any amount of damage to her. The most you could probably do would be 20k, 15k damage with her skill while her ult is up. When you can't do weakness break to the enemies, which will probably be a big feature in the 3.x meta, that's when Firefly falls off very heavily. That's when Acheron will shine more, Topaz, Jinglu, Himiko, Jade. Matter of fact, Bailu might actually be a better DPS than Firefly when you can't do the weakness break. Genuinely, Danhug would be better, Arlen would be better. Firefly is quite literally the worst character in the game when you can't do the weakness break. Before I end off the video though, let me just say real quick, because I forgot to talk about this in depth in the other recording, but there's also Firefly's light cone, right? This isn't her light cone, but her light cone is definitely overkill, okay? I would not recommend that you go for her light cone on top of everything else that I mentioned, but primarily because, like I said, it is overkill. An example of a character who really needs their light cone would be Acheron, right? With Acheron, you would definitely want her light cone. Without her light cone, she does like 50% less damage. It is that big of a deal. This is an insane light cone for Acheron, but when we're talking about Firefly, really you don't need it, right? Yes, her break damage or break effect is increased by 60%, right? Targets receive 24% increased break damage and their speed is lowered by 20%. So Firefly will get to attack more, right? Voice crack. But this is pretty much Welt's kit built into the light cone on top of being able to let Firefly do more break damage, which is great. It is a great light cone. It is a big step up from this light cone. But the fact that this is her second best in slot light cone and it's free and you can S5 it for free, really, this is all you need, right? Her light cone, 100% overkill, right? When the wearer attacks, increases their attack by 16%. Firefly relies heavily on attack, right? Her number one stat, of course, is break effect, but number 2 would probably be attack, and maybe close third will be speed. You definitely want quite a bit of speed for Firefly, but she gets a lot of speed built into her kit. That's how I have 156 in the first place. But this light cone also, see, when the wearer breaks an enemy's weakness, increases damage dealt by 24%, right? It's not like her best on slot light cone, but this is definitely a very close number 2. This isn't like an Acheron situation where without her light cone she does half the damage. Her light cone is probably a 20% increase in damage overall. I don't know if that's accurate, but it's probably somewhere around there. Her light cone is not gatekeeping half of her kit. You don't need it, but there's really not much else to say there. I'll see y'all, right? Just keep in mind everything that I said. Firefly will be good throughout 3.x, I bet, but there may be some cases where she's not the DPS that you want to go with, so just go for other DPSs. Don't go too heavy on Firefly. But that's it. I'll see y'all. Goodbye.